Good day. Welcome to another lesson on access to markets. Today we are looking at our movie case studies to learn how other businesses have accessed the markets before they raised funding. So we're going to look at our 3 case studies that we use throughout our lessons. The first one is the founder, which is about the McDonald's and Ray Kroc. And the second one, we look at the Moneyball, which is about the Oakland A's that changed the baseball game. And then we look at the AUI, which is about tenderpreneurs that secured big contracts with the Defense Department in the US. So those are the 3 case studies that we're going to look at today. And then we're going to identify how each of these case studies, or how the entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs within these businesses have access to markets. Because most of the time the SMMEs struggle to access the market, or they think that they need funding for them to access the markets. While personally I believe that first you need to prove that you have access to markets, then you apply for funding. And if you prove that you have access to markets, obviously now access to markets provide you with revenue. Then the funders will easily fund you if you prove that you have engaged the market, you have proven that the market exists. You just need funding to expand your business. Actually, Billy in Moneyball indicated that you need to understand your position in the market. So, but he was giving example in terms of the Oakland A's as a team. Basically, what he said is because the Oakland A's were a small team in terms of financial, they didn't have enough financial resources compared to like the Red Sox and other big baseball clubs. So, in one of the meetings that he had with his scouts, he told them that they need to understand that there are big teams, there are small teams, and there is 16 feet of crab, and the Oakland A's are sitting at the bottom. That example, it applies to small businesses. You need to understand that, especially the startups, as a small business, you understand that there are big teams, big companies that are listed. Those are big companies. And there are small companies which are sustainable, they've proven the market. And then there's 16 feet of crab, and there's a startup. So as a startup, you can now have that mentality of entitlement to say you need funding, because there's this 16 feet of crab that you need to go through. Meaning, first you need to make sure that operationally your business is operating and is in compliance with legislation. You need to make sure that you have the necessary accreditations. If you are in space that you need accreditations, you need to make sure that you prove that you can access the market. So that's 15 feet of crab that they're talking about, to say, for you to go through that, you need to prove yourself before somebody else can invest in your business. So you need to focus on making sure that you push yourself from that 16 feet to small business. It takes hard work for you to push yourself through the crap that they are talking about, because you need to prove the market without having funding. And then without funding, the customers, most of the time, they won't trust you, because they want to see, one, where you are operating from. They want to see the samples, the product that you can produce. They want to see that who have you supplied. They will look for reference letters. Sometimes you need mining license or training licenses or accreditations. So there are a lot of things that you need to make sure that you address before you even become a small business. So as a startup, there's a lot of things that you need to address before you become a small business where you can easily access funding. Personally, I believe that in South Africa, actually, we have sufficient funding to fund businesses. But the challenge is we have small businesses, but we have a lot of SMMEs, which are startups, and they still have a lot of crap to go through in terms of getting accreditation, making sure that they have right teams in place, making sure that they have industry required accreditations or licenses, making sure that they are able to produce a quality product or quality services so that they can prove themselves in the market, because it takes a lot, most especially if you don't have funding. But we're going to go through the 3 case studies to show you how other businesses have done it before you, so that you don't feel that you can't start because you don't have funding. Because sometimes they say it's a chicken and egg problem, but I believe it's not a chicken and egg problem, because we know that there was an egg first before the chicken. So access to market is your egg, and then access to funding, it becomes then it's your chicken. So first you need to have your egg. So we're going to go through these case studies, identify how they access the market in their environment, and then try to apply it to specific situation. In terms of you as the viewer, the learner, you need to understand which scenario can you use, how can you access the market before you have access to funding. So it means access to market, most of the time it will require you to bootstrap, meaning you need to fund access to market yourself. How you do it, you can apply different strategies. We're going to go through the McDonald's case study and then explain how Ray Kroc accessed the market, and then we're going to go through Moneyball to tell you how Billy, without funding, managed to access the market, or to win, to access players without getting external funding. And then we also look at the AY in terms of how they secured big contracts without getting external commercial funding. So those are the 3 case studies that we're gonna look at. Now we're gonna start with the McDonald's case study. And now going into the founder, which is the McDonald's case study. We look at Ray Kroc, right? Ray is an out-and-out salesperson, because before getting into McDonald's, he was selling the multi-mixers to restaurants and all that. Then he met the McDonald's brothers, and then he started engaging with them to franchise the McDonald's, because the McDonald's brothers only had 1 store. But before that, from the movie, based on the movie, you can see that Ray was always a salesperson, because at the time that he met McDonald's brothers, he was on the road selling the multi-mixers, because at the time the industry was using single mixers, but he had found a supplier of multi-mixers, so he licensed to sell the multi-mixers in that region that he was operating in. So from the beginning, he didn't need to manufacture the multi-mixers. He was not manufacturing them. There was a person who's manufacturing them. He just had 1 or 2 multi-mixers as a sample. So he bought the first multi-mixer. Then he goes to restaurants and sell them the multi-mixer, but he can demonstrate how the multi-mixer work and the advantages of that multi-mixer without filling up a factory with many multi-mixers. So what you will do, once a customer is interested in a multi-mixer, then he orders the multi-mixer from the supplier, because he already secured the customer. Then he orders and delivers. So you can see, in terms of that business model, he didn't need funding. He identified an opportunity. Then he bought 1 multi-mixer for him to go to show the customers what that multi-mixer can do. Should the customer be interested, then he phones the manufacturer to deliver the multi-mixer to that customer. So you can see from that business model, it doesn't need a lot of funding. He's proving the market. Once he secures the market, then he requests the supplier to supply the market. That's the cheapest way of operating a business. He was not a startup. He was doing it already for some time. But you can see in terms of that model, if it was the entrepreneurs that I meet They will say they want funding to buy multi-mixers so that they can put it in the warehouse, so that when they supply, they go to customers, they have products to sell, which now becomes an excuse. Because if you see how Ray is doing it and how most entrepreneurs want to do it, they want funding to set up before they've proven the market. So Ray didn't even had to apply for funding. He just had to buy one and go to the customers to present the multi-mixer. If they're interested, then he buys it, he delivers the multi-mixer to the customer pays. It's simple. No stock, no manufacturing facility, nothing. No massive funding. He just identified the market and then he developed a strategy how he's going to penetrate the market. It's that simple. That's how Ray operated even before McDonald's. But that being said, because he had years of experience in sales, because he sold properties before that, then he sold what they call folder knocks, like Murphy bait for the kitchen. With different products that he sold before that. He had experience, he understood the market to say, for you to get into the market, you don't necessarily have to invest a lot of money. You just need to invest the bare minimum, buy the product that you want to produce, and then present it to your customer. If the customer is interested, then you order it from the manufacturer. Eventually, when you have built enough market in terms of demand, then you can start considering applying for funding, because you have a market. To prove that you have a market, it justifies you opening a factory. You don't have to rush it to open a factory before you have proven the market. First, because now we know we have China. China, it's a manufacturing hub. Whatever that you want produced, they will be able to produce it for you. But okay, now I'm just giving example for China. But remember, certain markets specialize on certain things. Maybe general manufacturing, go to China. Maybe if you need chicken products or chicken machinery processing, you might go to India, because they mostly eat chicken and they develop technologies towards processing chicken or chicken related products. But there are different markets that you might have to look at in terms of the products that you want to manufacture. Then once you have identified the manufacturer, then you discuss the terms to say, if I order the quantities and all those things. Once that is set up, then you can go to the market to start marketing that product. Once you have the order, you already have the arrangement with your manufacturer. You know, maybe it takes a month, 3 months to land. Then you tell your customer that the product, even though I'm presenting it, it will gonna take us 3 months to manufacture the product for you. Then if the customer order, then you phone your manufacturer from China or wherever you're buying the product. It can be even local. Then you go to the manufacturer, you fetch the product, or you get the product and you supply your customer. It's simple. Then once you've proven the market, then you can set up a manufacturing plant. Because if you set up a manufacturing plant, because you have some letters of intent from customers, you'll set up a factory, and then it's going to take you long for you to get your product market fit, in terms of your products being demanded to an extent that you will be able to fully utilize your factory. So that's the approach that Ray took, to say, I don't have to manufacture the multi-mixers or fill up the warehouse with multi-mixers. I'll just buy one, go to different customers. If they're interested in the multi-mixer, then I order from my supplier. Then I supply them. Simple business model. You don't need funding. You just need to know the market that you are targeting. Identify an opportunity. Find a way to service that market without you investing a lot of money. And then once you have proven the market, believe me, the funders will come. Because there's the misconception to say in South Africa there's limited entrepreneurship because entrepreneurs cannot access funding. But that's not the problem. The problem is entrepreneurs are not proving the market first. They don't develop strategies to see how they can access the market before the funding. Because if you access the market before the funding, then you've proven yourself that you are capable of accessing the market. Then the funders will be comfortable backing you. Instead of having a nice business plan and then you go to the funders to say, fund us so that we can set up the factory so that you can sell to these customers. And of course, you can say, no, based on the market research and all that, yes, you can still go to our super deal maker, do a nice business plan with all the market research. But the proof is in the pudding. If you don't go out, service that market, then the funders will not be easily willing to assist you because you haven't proven the market. So access to markets come first. Obviously, there are certain markets that for you to access, you might need to have a factory. But you can build a prototype. You manufacture samples from wherever. I keep on saying China, not that I'm advertising China, but that's depending on the quality they're looking for, they are flexible in terms of producing product cheaply so that you can be able to service the market profit. You look at the country that is supplying the product that you want to sell. Even it doesn't have to be a country, even locally, you might find that there is a manufacturer somewhere or there is a farmer somewhere who's farming tomatoes or whatever. You can buy 2 boxes of tomato and then you go out to the market, you show them the quality of the tomatoes, you determine what is your demand, how many tomatoes you buy a month. Here are the tomatoes, are you interested? If you're interested, how often should I supply you? Phone me if you're interested in buying tomatoes. You don't have to own the farm. Then once the order comes, then you collect the tomatoes from the farmer and you deliver to your customer. You don't need to own the land. Yes, the margins might be thin because you become a middleman, but still you don't have the headache of the risk that comes with farming. Because remember, sometimes it rains, sometimes it doesn't. Then you get hail and all those things. You got diseases and all that. So the farmers are taking a lot of risk. So even if you want to eventually get into farming, then once you've proven the market, then you can backwards integrate. If you go into funders, you say, I need funding and I have this market that I've secured and I've been servicing it for a year or whatever, 2 years, whatever the number of years that you've been servicing that market. Then the funders will be comfortable that 1, you have secured the market, but 2, you understand the sector that you are going into. Because some sectors, they look easy, that you can easily go into those sectors. But once you start, then they become too technical. Like farming, it sounds like you just take the seeds and you put them in the ground and then you wait for rain or you put water, whatever, and then the seeds grow and then you harvest, then you take them to the market. It's not that simple process. There are a lot of risk. You might find that season maybe it's too cold, the plants die, or maybe it gets too hot, or it rains a lot. Then it affects your yields in terms of your harvest. So you need to understand that it comes with risk. So first you need to understand the market by being the middleman. If there's frost or hail or whatever that damage the product, you just tell your customers that this season you're struggling to get access to the product, but I'll see what I can do. You haven't lost anything, but the farmer has lost in terms of production. They've invested money in that. So accessing the market, you don't necessarily have to have the product manufactured by you or produced by you. You can contract manufacture and deliver to the market until you've learned the nitty-gritties of that market. That's the learning that you can take from how Ray Kroc approached the market, even before the McDonald's, when you are still selling the multi-mixers. And now we're going to go into how he accessed the market and how he grew the McDonald's market once he bought into McDonald's franchise. That was Ray Kroc as the multi-mixer salesperson, running a business as a sales rep. Okay, he owned the business, but he was more a sales rep for manufacturer. But whatever the customer that he secures, they were his customers. Now, enter Ray Kroc in the McDonald's environment. And Ray met the McDonald brothers while he was selling the multi-mixers. Then they ordered about 8 multi-mixers, and then there's something that he never heard of a restaurant ordering 8 multi-mixers. So what he did is, I need to see this offer. They've ordered, he could have phoned the supplier to deliver the multi-mixers at the McDonald's brothers, but he was shocked by the number. Initially, I think it was 7, and then they said, no, we need 8 or 9. Then he went to meet the McDonald's brothers to see what kind of operation is ordering so many multi-mixers. He got there. He was impressed with the operation. Remember, the McDonald's brothers were only owning one store in San Bernardino. Or they had franchise few, but that hadn't worked out. But they were focused. They stopped franchising because it was not working out for them. They were focusing on San Bernardino store. What they did, the McDonald's brothers, they had perfected the fast food process. They had eliminated all the other products that they were selling. They were only focusing on the burger, chips, and drink. So it was a burger, chips, and drink. So when Ray saw the McDonald's operation, he was very interested. Remember, as a salesperson, he saw an opportunity. Remember, all along, he was 54 at the time. All his years was in sales. But once he saw the opportunity, he saw that this is an opportunity where there could be a broader expansion of the McDonald's. Then he negotiated with the McDonald's brothers. Eventually, they appointed him as a sales rep. Same modus operandi. To say, we enter into the franchise, an agreement, you expand the McDonald's brand. He didn't start the McDonald's. He found it operating. But he saw that this is an opportunity. Can we expand the brand? The McDonald's brothers agreed. They gave him the rights to expanding the brand. And they shared with him in terms of the operating processes and all those things that are required for you to set up a similar restaurant. Then he went first. He set up his own store so that he can showcase the brand in Chicago, because that one was operating in San Bernardino. But he then went and set up the store, his own store in Chicago. And again, we're talking access to market here. So he believed that there is market for this brand, McDonald's as a brand. So instead of trying to build many stores, he built his own store first, one store. How did he build it? Bootstrapping again. He went to the bank, asked for the loan, not on the business, because the business was not operating, so it didn't have proof of financial records. And then he didn't go to say, fund me for this startup, because he understood that it will be a hassle for you to get funding for you to set up something that is unproven. So what he did is he went to the bank to say, give me an access bond on my property. Then they gave me an access bond on the property. Then he took that access bond. He set up the first store. Okay, because if he went to the bank to say, fund me to set up a store, he would have spent, I don't know how many years trying to convince the banks to fund him. But he found a different way of funding the operation. To say, I have a property, give me access bond on this property so that I can... No, just give me access bond. It didn't matter to the bank because they had security. Then he set up his first store. So once he set up his first store, so he had a place or a prototype, if I can call it that, to say, here's the store that I can franchise. I'm franchising this store, so that when he's speaking to, call it the market, the franchisees, because remember now, in this case, the franchisees were his market. And how he structured the deals initially, the franchisees will sign up to get a franchise from him. It's money up front. The franchisee will go and find a property and build a McDonald's there. Then he comes with the systems and the process and the know-how. So you can see how he's accessing this market. It's a franchise model where you have your own store, but people come to say we're interested in this business. They spend the money to set up. You just supply them with the know-how or the products, which is a very, very cheap way. Remember, now he's accessing the market without spending money in accessing the market. Actually, the market is spending money to expand his brand, which is a brilliant way of expanding or accessing different markets by franchising it or selling your concept to other people in different areas. They are paying you for the concept, but while in the process, they are expanding your brand. That's what Ray Kroc did initially. And again, the type of market, how he approached the market, he went to his close friends. He went to the people that he knew, the people that he had dealt with before. So he was accessing, not trying to get the fancy market far away, whatever. He went to the people that he had access to, which sometimes SMMEs is something that we don't do. We don't approach or sell our products to our immediate network. We're trying to access big market, export market, and all that without proving ourselves in our local environment. So what Ray did in this case is proving himself using the people around him. Obviously, they know him, they trust him. So whatever is selling to them, if they have the money to buy, they will buy. And that it becomes a process of you accessing the market. Yes, you still want the bigger market. He wanted to go national. Remember, Ray, his vision was McDonald's, it should be like a church. There must be a church, a police station, church, and McDonald's. That's how he saw it, that McDonald's should be in each and every community in America. That's how the market, that's what he was seeing in terms of the market that he wanted to access. But he understood his limitations. To say, I don't have the muscle, I don't have the funding to access that market. Then, first, I built my own store. I use it as a showroom or an exhibition to say, this is how the brand or the shop or the McDonald's look like. Are you interested? And in the process, he was learning the McDonald's operations hands-on. Because remember, you didn't know the McDonald's brothers were the ones who developed the McDonald's concept. So by starting his own store, first thing that was important is for him to learn the operations. I know they were having fights with the McDonald's brothers because the environment in Chicago and San Bernardino were a little bit different. So Ray needed, because the fries were not coming out as perfect as they were coming out in San Bernardino, because that was more, he called it a desert. So it was a different environment altogether. So initially Ray struggled to make the perfect fries at his store because the environment, the humidity was different from that of San Bernardino. So by him starting small, bootstrapping that small operations, it made him to understand the market and the production and the systems cheaper, because he could have expanded and tried to sell it to as many people as he can. went to the bank, secured the funding, opened 10 franchises, and all the 10 franchises might struggle to produce the perfect fries as the McDonald's brothers store. And that might have affected the brand, and the brand might have failed if he was that aggressive or so entitled to say, instead of starting with one store, he wanted to start with maybe 10 stores. So by starting with the first store, so that gave him, one, to showcase the store to potential franchisees. Two, for him to understand the operation, the nitty-gritties, the technical requirement of that, which is, I call it cheap. I know setting up a store is not that cheap, but if you set up one, the learning curve is not too steep because it's only one operation. But if he had went aggressive initially by setting up 10, and the learning curve becomes steep and costly, which you might not recover. So for entrepreneurs, if you are starting, access the smallest market that you can, service that market, learn the operations, the technical know-how, understand the tricks, making sure that there are certain things that you might not know. It might look simple. I mean, setting up a restaurant where you are only selling burger, fries, and soda. It sounds simple, but it was not, because he was not producing the quality chips as the original store. So he had to learn, and that you need to put a furnace so that the potatoes, they can be put in the furnace so that it takes out the moisture and all that. But that is part of the learning curve for him as a startup. So there will be, remember I gave you examples that before you become a small business, there's a 16 feet of crap that you have to go through. That was a rake rock 16 feet of crap that he was learning. He was learning that there are different environments from different places. You need to make sure that your fries are stored in a certain environment is different from how the McDonald's brothers were doing. And secondly, what he did is he approached his close network. So he tested the concept with his close people. Rather than trying to be aggressive, going all over the place, he started with his close friends. And once the close friends started buying into the concept, then he had few McDonald's to showcase to other people, to say, this thing is what it works. We have one here, one there, one there. But he was working with close friends. And you'll see in the movie as well, those friends were actually making mistakes and all that. But because he was closer to them, he was able to rein them in, to say, this is how it needs to be done. So that even when he goes to expand the market that he's trying to access, he already learned the behavior of the franchisees. He had the experience to say, these are the potential flaws, these are the potential areas. How do I make sure that I set up the controls? So that's how he accessed the market. I mean, now I think McDonald's is almost in every country in the world. I think at the time that I read, I think it was in 90 countries or so. But it started from the humble beginning, where Ray started with his own store. Then he went to his immediate network. Then he expanded to the Chicago area. Then he started moving from one state to another. So he didn't just access the US market or the whole international market. He started with small markets. And he didn't start with going out to get funding to fund the startup. He raised money through his personal assets. And then once he set up, he sold to his close friends. So access to market, it must not necessarily be linked to access to funding, because many entrepreneurs are frustrated to say, we can't access funding. But they're not trying to find creative ways of trying to access the market, which I know it's not easy. There are a lot of things that you need to learn. Some will say they don't have the property to give us security. But there's always, if you're going to be manufacturing, you can negotiate with the suppliers. You can buy one sample, for argument's sake. Then use that sample like Ray did when he was selling their multi-mixers. So there are different ways that you can use to access the market. It's not one way where you need to secure funding before you access the market. Access the market first. Yes, running a business first, you want to make money. And then to make money, you need funding. But to get funding, you need to prove that you have markets. So the most important thing you need to do is, before you make money, you need to prove that you have the market. And then once you have the market, you can apply for funding. And once you have the funding, then you're going to make money. That's how entrepreneurs, most people the startup, you need to think about it in terms of when you approach your entrepreneurship. Access to markets is your first start. You need to find the right strategies for your business or for your sector or industry. Learn other, maybe now we're talking McDonald's. You might be maybe in construction space. Learn how successful business in that space, how did they make it? Obviously, we know that no one was born rich. It might be your parents, but even their parents, obviously, they had to start somewhere. So you also need to start somewhere. There's that 16 feet of crap that you have to go through as a startup. But as you're going through it, obviously, you need to make sure that obviously you have a proper entity structured. It meets the requirement of the sector that you want to. If you need licenses and all that, if you need whatever that you need to make sure that you have a proper team in place. Remember, the team as well, it doesn't have to be employed. You can enter into a service level agreement with whoever that you might need should you secure a market or should you secure a customer. Then you go to the immediate market, your closest market that you can target, the low-hanging fruits. Start servicing your low-hanging fruits. In the process, you'll be understanding your business a little bit better, and you'll also be understanding the market better, because if you are targeting your closest people, obviously you'll learn in terms of the behavior, how they use your product or how they don't use your product. Then from those learnings, as you're expanding to the bigger market, you would have having those lessons that you have learned. Then you can implement as you expand in the market. Then once you expanded the market, when you can prove that you understand operationally, you understand the sector that you are in, and secondly, you have secured sufficient market to generate your revenue, then funding will become easier. Okay, it's got its own challenges, which we'll address when we're doing access to funding, but it makes it easier. You have addressed one of the critical things that you need to address. You have the market and you have the technical know-how. So in the process of you accessing the market, you will be learning the industry more. Remember, if you are starting, you might have been in that industry as an employee, but it becomes a different kettle of fish when you're running your own business. So if you start small, access the smallest market that you can afford based on your resources. Doesn't matter what resources. Depending on the resources that you have, you identify the market that is low hanging for your sector. Then you go for that market. With Ray, he went first, he started his own store, set up so that he can prove to the market that this concept works. Secondly, he went to his closest network. He sold them the franchises. And in the process, he was learning how they behave, how to improve, what can be improved with the closest network that he had. And then as he was expanding, going out, then it made it easier for McDonald's to mushroom as it had happened. So we might, if he had taken maybe a different approach where he went big, starting big, setting up maybe a lot of stores, the brand might have failed. We might not have known about McDonald's. But his approach of starting small, accessing the immediate market, and then growing from there, it's a very important lesson. And I believe many entrepreneurs, they can learn something from that story, make sure that they bite what they can chew. Okay, that's now on how the founder or the McDonald's story or Ray Kroc in this case approached accessing the market. You can now we're gonna go into the Auckland A's in terms of access to markets, but it's in the different sector. So their approach was a little bit different. So I'm just giving you the 3 case studies so that you have a broader understanding on the different approaches that you can take as an entrepreneur to access the market, even before you secure funding. Then the funding will come after you have proven that you have the market that you can service. Now we're going into Moneyball, and we're going to look into how Billy, which was the team manager for the Auckland A's, accessed the market. Now, this is a little bit different from the McDonald's case study in a way that we're talking about a baseball team. And then in terms of their market is the players. Billy was competing with big teams. So the Auckland A's was a small team in that league. So you had the Red Sox, which was the biggest then in terms of the budget, and you had small teams like the Auckland A's. Billy had a challenge where he played well the season before, and he had good players. So when the season ended, then now in this case, the Red Sox offered 3 of his top players big money moves. And they moved because the Auckland A's couldn't afford them, because they couldn't compete with the Red Sox, because the Red Sox had big budget. So now Billy was frustrated to say, look, I still need to compete in this market, but I'm competing with big teams that are spending a lot of money. So how do I access the market in terms of the good players? That was Billy's challenge, and he approached the owner, Steve, and Steve told him that, look, Billy, you need to accept that you are a small team manager. So don't try to look for money that we don't have. We don't have the money. Go out there with the resources and the players that you have and find the best way to win. That was Steve. So basically telling Billy that I'm not going to put in money into this team because we can't compete with the big teams because we just don't have the money. What Steve was basically saying to Billy to say, you must go out there, you and your scouts, you must go out and try to find players to replace the players that we lost. So they, as I said earlier, they had lost 3 big players, the Red Sox. So now, Billy in this case was acting like many small businesses that I come across, because they are small, they want to compete with big players, and they want the money to do that. It's like Billy was like a spaza shop owner who wanted to compete with the likes of Pick n Pay, ShopRite, and Checkers and Spar. Then the owner reminded this manager of this spaza shop to say, you don't have the budget to compete with the big players, but what you can do is to find the best way to compete with them. You need to find your niche. You need to find a way. It might be, for a spaza shop, it might be how you source your product, or the type of product that you put in store, the relationships that you build with the community, and the different approaches that you can put together, the strategies that you can put together, given that you don't have the funding. You can still compete even though you don't have the funding. That's the moral of the story in terms of accessing the market. So you can still access the market, but you can access different markets to that are targeted by, let's say, the big retailers. If you are a spaza shop, you access the same market, but you serve them differently. Maybe you deliver, maybe you provide cooked meals instead of, the different approaches that you can take, or you provide them the hampers, or whichever way that you want to provide them in terms of doing something different from how the big retailers are doing. You don't necessarily have to have the funds or have the big budget for you to compete. You can compete differently. That's the similarities between the story of the Moneyball in terms of how Billy accessed the market and of the small business. That's how I will equate the two. In Moneyball, what happened is then Billy went and called his scouts. And during the meeting, you'll see that the scouts are presenting players that are very expensive to replace the players that have left. And in that meeting, Billy asked them to say, look, can we replace the players that we lost? The room said, no, we can't. Now, he told them that you guys now are behaving like you are looking for a perfect replacement. You're looking for a perfect Italian model, which we cannot afford. And that's when he brought in the example that there are big teams, there are small teams, and there's 16 feet of crap, and there's the Oakland A's. He made them understand that they are in the mooring. For them to get out of the fix that they find themselves, they need to find a better way or better strategy or different strategy to what the scouts were doing in terms of recruiting. It took Steve refusing to give Billy the budget or the funds to buy players for Billy to go back to the drawing board to see how best we can source the players. Now, what did Billy do? Billy looked at the sector. He visited one team to look at if he can switch players between his team and the players that they have there, if he can trade players and swap players. So that strategy didn't work. That's where now he identified Pete, which was an economics graduate, but he had a method. He had studied a method by the guy called Billy James. Pete studied that method. That method helped the Oakland A's to identify cheap players in the league that are being ignored by the big players. Those players, that method that they use, it calculates the number of runs that a player achieves in relation to their price. So Pete understood that method to say, look, there are many players in the league that we can buy for cheap, which are ignored by the big leagues or the big teams. So how Pete explained it is that, remember, people discriminate against other people depending on maybe their age, their stature, their physical build. Sometimes people are ignored because of certain things. But statistics, it removed the whole discrimination or the whole bullshit around assessment of the players. He assessed the players based on what they can deliver. Apart from their physical appearance, apart from their age, it ignored those factors. It looks that, does this person deliver the runs? And from that, I remember Billy having a conversation with Pete, his protege. And Pete told him that the baseball is medieval. They buy players. But what they're supposed to do is to buy wins. If you are buying wins, for you to win, you need to be buying runs. And for you to get runs, you need to find players that they can give you the runs. That's what the method used. To say, as a team, you're looking to buy wins. And for you to win, you need runs. And then for you to get runs, you need players that they can give you the runs. So that method eliminated other things. To say, this player is on form, or is it the most wanted in the league? All those smokes and mirrors. But it identifies players that can deliver the runs, which will deliver the wins. So now, by the Oakland A's using that statistics that was developed by Billy James, then they were able to identify cheap players in the market that are ignored by big teams. But they're cheap because they're ignored. Some were being released, some were aging and all those. So based on the statistics came to one number. how many runs can this player get? How many times does he get to base? That's all that it looked at. How many times does this player get to base? So they use that statistics and they identify very cheap players. And by identifying these cheap players, they managed to beat I think it was standing for 100 years or so, the record of the baseball of going 20 games without losing. That's what that small team did with that method, without the funding, without external funding, but they bootstrapped, used the resources that they had to buy players that they can afford. But they only looked at one thing: can this player deliver the runs? Because if the player delivers the runs, then they deliver the win. And as a team, all you want is the win. And to get the win, you need the runs. And to get the runs, you need the player. So that's the only criteria that they used, and they were able to win. I think they won the same number of games as the Sox, but the Sox I think they had spent 120 million, and the Oakland A's had only spent, I think, 30 million. You see, 130 million giving you the same number of wins as the team that spent 30 million. That's how you access the market. That's the strategy to say, how do I win with the limited resources that I have? So you need to go to the drawing board, strategize to look at your sector, to say, what is very important in my sector? Because obviously we know that you're going in business to make money, right? And to make money, you need money. Okay? And how will you get money? By getting access to customers, access to market. So you need to identify the market that you want to access, identify the things that the big players in that market are ignoring, identify the niche that you can target given your budget or lack of. In this case, you don't have budget, but how can you access that market without budget? Then you look at options to say, is there a method? Has it been done before in this sector? How are successful businesses in this sector that I'm operating in, how did they achieve that product market fit? How did they find the gaps within the market that they're operating in? Which is what Billy did at the Oakland A's. He found the gap. He found the method to identify cheap players that will be able to deliver the runs. So if you are in retail, identify the product that you can have access to, that you don't have to buy in bulk, or you have maybe the manufacturer close by, but you don't have to carry it in your store. Then you can be able to access that market. Remember, like if you look at the retail stores, I mean, you look at your Pick and Pay, if you look at their financials, the last time I checked, you find that their stock holding, it's averagely 180 days. They hold stock for more than 6 months on average. You see, they have so much invested in stock, but now with the technology, you can use what is called just in time. You procure whatever the customer wants. Let's say you have your customers in the area that you're operating, you know that they demand certain things in a certain time. Because you are closer to them, you can take orders for a certain date and go to your supplier to say, supply me, and then I'll pay you end of the month. Then you get the supply. You've also already arranged for customers. You go deliver, the customer pays you, you take your card, you pay back the supply. Limited investment. You don't necessarily need the funding to access that market. And with the SMMEs that most, not all, and I guess even my example is a little bit ignorant, so forgive me for that. There are certain SMMEs that are doing things differently. But in this case, I'm just giving you an example of the SMMEs that I've interacted with. It's just a simple concept of finding your niche. Here's the different market segments that I can service if I'm a spaza shop. I mean, I can sell everything. I can focus on selling fish and chips, or I can focus on selling bread, simple things, or I can focus on selling things that I know they're urgent or they're important, and people, when they're looking for those things, price doesn't matter. I can just keep those type of products, or I can have an arrangement with my suppliers and my customers. I take orders. Maybe I deliver within certain date. You know, like people buy groceries every month, and generally they'll buy it maybe on their payday or after payday or after SASA. Then you can go collect the orders to say, what products would you want to buy? I can negotiate the prices and all that. And you take those orders, you go to a supplier to say, supply me this product, then I'll pay you end of the month. Initially, you can maybe borrow from your family, friends, whatever, to say, I have orders, I'm going to buy from the supplier, I give them to my customers, and they pay me, I pay you back. It's a simple funding arrangement. If really you need funding, or if you can negotiate with your suppliers, or you don't have a cent to start with this venture. So you have different options, but you can still access the market. That's the point that I'm trying to drive home, to say we don't have to be sitting around complaining that we can't get into business, or we can't start businesses because we won't be able to access the funding, or any other excuses for that matter. Most important thing, go out there, find the market, find the way to service the market. The market can be saturated, but there's always a gap in the market that other players are ignoring, like Billy did for the Oakland A's. I mean, but baseball it's a very, very old sport in the US, but there was no one who thought about implementing the method that Billy James had developed. So Billy found that method and he implemented it, and he went and broke the records using simple methods that focus on players that get on base, players that achieve runs. And remember, runs gives you wins. And as a team, all they wanted is wins. What type of players you have that will deliver the wins, it doesn't matter, or it shouldn't. But remember, in sports, it does. But Billy forgot what's the sports, the culture, or the tradition of the sport. Then he looked at, how can I win given the resources that I have, or because given the lack of resources, how can I win? And he found a way to win. He found a way to access the market. So as SMME, find your method, find your differentiation. Given you don't have funding, even though I always say there's a law, we have sufficient funding in South Africa, but there are no SMMEs that are willing to go through that 16 feet of crap to clean up their house, make sure that they secure the market, they service the market with the limited resources that they have. And then once you've proven that you can service this market, you have learned the technicalities of the market, then you go out and seek funding. That's the different approach on accessing the market. But now the biggest excuse and issue of entitlement to say, I need to have funding for me to access that market. They must build me a factory to produce this and this so that I can service the customers. You're gonna run around, you're gonna be frustrated, you're gonna be stressed, you're gonna blame everyone except yourself to say the funding institution, they don't give funding. Yes, they say, okay, we have a different problem. We're going to address it when we're looking at access to funding. But certain problems are self-created by entrepreneurs. They can approach things differently. And there's a saying that banks give money to those who don't really need it, which is true. If you are sitting on the other side, you'd rather give money to a person who has proven himself rather than giving money to a startup. Remember, as an employee of a bank, they are judged based on performance. They are judged based on how many loans in your portfolio have been written off. So you don't expect a fund manager or a portfolio manager or an account manager, for that matter, funding your business that hasn't proven that it can access the market. Because if he doesn't have confidence and prove that you have accessed the market, then you're putting his job at risk, his performance bonus. His portfolio will look bad because he funded people who haven't proven the market. So it goes both ways. Yes, we have red tape and all those things that I understand. They still exist. They can still be addressed. But by addressing or accessing the market the right way, finding the best way to access the market, then you are eliminating thousands and thousands of hours that you're going to spend chasing the investors. Just find a way to access the market based on what you have and prove it. Approach your close circles, do it like Ray did it, or find a innovative way to approach the market like Billy did for the Oakland A's in Moneyball. So it's very, very important to look at different strategies so that you can access the market. And once you have accessed the market, banks and funding institutions, they are in business of making money. So if you can prove that you have the market, or you found the innovative way to service the market like Billy did, then it will make it easier for them to fund you, because they can see that you will bring in money, you're still gonna grow, they will still benefit from your banking services and all those things. So it becomes a win-win situation for both of you. But if you come with a nicely drawn business plan, you haven't proven anything, with letters of intent or market research, yes, you can still do the market research, but as I said earlier, the proof is in the pudding. So prove the market, and then the banks will come and find, if you are not your Bill, you can't find an innovative way to service the market with all that you have, then take Ray Kroc's example that we used of servicing the market without owning the manufacturing plant. Simple, you become a middleman. Once the market is proven and you understand the industry, it will be easier for you to go to the funders to set up your manufacturing factory. We saw Ray use the old or the standard model of you build a relationship with your supplier, you secure the market. Once the customer order, you go to the supplier and they deliver, but you maintain those relationships. And later on, you can set up your manufacturing plant if you want, or you can continue with that model. There are billionaires that are just playing the middleman. Remember your Pick and Pay, your Spa, they're just playing middlemen. They get products from the suppliers and they give it to the customers. Or the difference is that they hold stock. So you can maybe operate it differently. It can be an online store. Don't have to have physical presence. Just set up a quick online store. People order, or you engage. Whichever way you engage, then you go to the suppliers, you source the product, you give it to your customer. You become a middleman. Christo, we say are billionaires because they just playing middlemen. In terms of the Pick and Pay, very rich, because they just play the middleman. So you don't necessarily, for you to access the market, you need to find an innovative way. You need to understand your sector. Look at the gaps that exist in your sector. Look at how you can service that market without you putting a lot of investment in infrastructure. And once you've proven the market, then you can set infrastructure. Because in that way, you will also be managing your risk. Because believe me, more than 75% of startup businesses fail. That's the reality of it. So by you proving the market first, you are reducing that risk for yourself. You're not going to be that statistics of 75% rate of business failure. That's the second case study from Moneyball, is how Billy accessed the players market without having the budget. He found the method to calculate effective players that the league was ignoring. You could get them for cheap, and then they gave him the runs, and the runs gave him the win. That's the lesson. Find an innovative way to service the market that you are targeting. You need to understand the industry that you are operating in. There's always space. You're small businesses are more agile. You don't have head office to approve anything. You can do whatever that you can do. So, and then the big players, they have bureaucracies that they have to go through, the approval processes and all that. So you don't have that. You are agile. You can find a way, use it to advantage as an SMME, like Billy did for the Oakland A's. Maybe you might be as successful as they have been. All right, that is a lesson from the movie Moneyball, and how the Oakland A's, you accessed the markets. So this is very, very relevant to the SMMEs, to say there's a lot of crap that you have to deal with before you become a sustainable small business. Find a creative way to deal with all that nonsense that you have to deal with until you have a sustainable market that you can service. Okay, now we're going into War Dogs, the movie War Dogs as a case study, and we're looking at AUI. But before we get to AUI, I just want to tell you the story, the David story, which David was a partner for Ephraim. Ephraim started AUI, and David later joined him. But I just wanted to tell you a story before he joined him, in terms of how he accessed the market. And then we're going to go into the main story of AUI, because War Dogs is about AUI, two boys who went for the defense contracts, and they ended up landing a 300 million tender contract with the US defense, and they faked their papers and all that, but they end up landing the contract. That we're going to address it when we're addressing how you access the market using the tender system. Now, here's David. David started a massage business where he was going around massaging rich people in their homes. If you look at David, he identified the market in terms of giving people massage, right? Instead of trying to go to government or to funding institution to say, give me money to set up a spa where I can massage people, he bought a small kit, massage kit, where he can take that kit and visit people in their homes, rich people in their homes, and massage them there. He saw the market that people need massage, right? But because he didn't have this entitlement mentality that I'll get funding, he bought a small kit. And then he used that kit to go around massaging rich people in suburb areas or rich areas. So, it's a easier way or a bootstrap way to enter a market, where you look what you have. What is the cheapest way I can enter this market? That's what David did in this case. Instead of wanting to build a spa in the mountains where it's got fancy things, he just bought a kit. And then he used that kit to visit people in their homes. And the business was doing well until he made a mistake on going into the bedsheet business. So that was doing well. So he had a clientele and all that. So what do you say in terms of accessing the market? The message is try starting small, prove that you have access to market, and then invest more or go out, look for funding to expand the existing market. But in this case, David didn't expand that market. that he was servicing of massage. Then once that business made him money, he decided to diversify into selling bed sheets. So he took the profit that he was making, massaging rich people, started small. As he was growing, then he took that money, he bought the bed sheets. And unfortunately, it did what I'm trying to advise you to against, to say you don't go invest a lot of money in the sector that you haven't proven the market. He did the opposite of what I'm trying to tell you throughout this program, because he took the profit from the business that he understood, which is the massage business. He went and bought the sheets, bed sheets for old people, the market that he didn't know anything about. So he invested a lot of money. It's like entrepreneur saying, I want to set up a business, give me money, but you haven't proven the market. So he did the same thing. But okay, unfortunately, he used this money. So I guess he can be forgiven for that. Then he bought the bed sheets. He didn't do the market research. Then he realized that people are not buying the bed sheets because the industry was not interested in the product, because he hasn't proven the market first before he bought the sheets. And he took all his money, bought those sheets, and that's why he went under. That's why he ended up working for Ephraim in AUI. And he bought the sheets and he went out the market. I have the sheets, I bought a lot of sheets, and no one was interested. And that's how he failed, which is opposite to how he started. He started the right way of buying setting up a small operation, service the market. As you're growing, expand the market that you understand. But instead of expanding the market that he understood, he went into bed sheets. And then he put all his investment in the bed sheets, and then he failed. And then that's how he went to join Ephraim, because Ephraim had to come to the rescue. He didn't have anything, and the baby was coming. So he needed an income, and the bed sheets were not selling. So then he joined Ephraim in AUI. So next, we're going to go into the AUI in terms of how you access the tender market, the approach that they used, that as an entrepreneur you can learn from. Okay, now we're going into our last case study, which is AUI. We're talking about cowboys now. They took risk and everything for them to access the market. But now, just to a brief explanation in terms of how they approached the access to market. This one, in the South African context, AUI, we call them tenderpreneurs in the South African market context. As you know, tenderpreneurs, you don't have to own anything. You just have to have access to the resources that you can use in your business. Yes, you can own things, but it's not necessarily important. As long as maybe you have an office where they can contact you, you have printers and access to computer, maybe access to phone, so that you can be accessible. You'll be able to check the tender adverts. You can be able to respond, make copies, scan, and send the proposals to whoever who has issued the tender. That's the tenderpreneurship model. And then, which is very, very important and you can't ignore as a business. That's an easier way to access markets. Because once you get a tender, then you have a secured market that you need to service. And now with the financing environment in South Africa, we have a lot of, they call themselves fintech businesses that fund SMEs. They don't necessarily fund startups. But if you have the contract, you have secured the market in terms of the contract, or they awarded you a tender. Then these fintechs, because they just need your bank statement proof, and then they need the session from the person who gave you the tender, then you get your funding and you execute. So once you have access to the tender market, and we know the pricing from the tender system, the margins are very nice, I must say. You're going to make nice margins, and then you can continue servicing the tender market, but that well often dries up. If it dries, then you need to know that strategically you are building another market. It can be from the same business, but develop different market that is not reliant on government advertising tenders, because it's a matter of luck, and we know how corrupt the tender system is. So you can't rely on tender systems or a tender system as a business, because you might not get any tender for the longest period. So it's not a reliable business model unless you are AUI, you have studied the market, you understand that this market is sustainable. We'll go into what the AUI guys did. If you are targeting, that's what I always advise the entrepreneurs that I meet that are servicing or that doing tenders. Find a sustainable market outside the tendering system or the government market system, where as you submitting your tenders, because submitting tenders, remember, it doesn't cost much, but it costs your time. You need to prepare tender documents and submitting. Yes, you call them tenderpreneurs, but to submit a tender is hard work. Remember, the tenders have their requirements, the compliance, and all those things. So it's not as easy as we say that they are tenderpreneurs. We think they just go knock at the office and they just give them the tender. No, they apply the process that they have to go through. Maybe even the bribing process is involved there. So there's a lot of things that these tenderpreneurs do to secure that market. But that market, I continuously emphasize that market at times is not sustainable, okay? Unless you are offering a unique product that no one else can supply the government. Yes, it can be sustainable for you. But again, if you are doing that unique product, you rather sell to, instead of you chasing the tenders, you rather sell to the tenderpreneurs. So they go chase the tenders, they bribe whoever they are bribing. When they need the product, they come to you. You focus on improving the manufacturing and focusing on the manufacturing, if that is your sector. So eventually, as you get in the tenders, build capacity to be able to service the other markets. If you are in construction, let's say build enough infrastructure, have enough yellow equipment, so that even at the time that you are no longer getting the tenders, but you will have the infrastructure or the equipment that those tenderpreneurs, they can come rent from you. So once you access one market, find a way to diversify that market. So access to market is not just about one market. You can access the first market, which is the start. Then once you have accessed that market, use that market to diversify your product offering into another market. Not necessarily a different product. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, so you can do different product, but in this case, I'm not saying you supply. If you are in construction, let's say it's road construction, you build sufficient infrastructure so that to extend that you are not only servicing government directly, but you're also servicing people who are servicing government, which is a different market. So strategically, you service the government directly to generate enough resources for you to build your own infrastructure. Once you've built your own infrastructure, then you start servicing a diversified market, so that if you're no longer getting the tenders, you are getting business from private businesses. And that will sustain your business maybe until you get your next tender. So it's twofold. It's cheap to get access to the tender market, which is the easier route if the product that you are supplying is consumed by government or by large corporates that use the tender system. Easiest market to access, you don't necessarily have to have the infrastructure and all that. You can just find a way to source the product that will be supplied. Similar to, remember the example that I gave in terms of Ray Kroc when you were selling the multi-mixers in the McDonald's case study. Similarly, the tender system, you can find the supplier, and then you buy from the supplier whenever there's demand. You have a tender, or they put you on the list of suppliers. When they order, you go source from your customer, then you supply. Or even if you don't have a relationship with the suppliers, but people who secure tenders, it's easier to fund because you know the job is guaranteed. So the funders will easily fund you to access that market. But once you have access to it, I repeat, don't only focus on that market. Diversify, accessing a different market. In this case, without going too far from the type of business that you do, service the people who are competing with you for the same tenders. Once they secure the tenders, they come to you for the yellow equipment or whatever that might be specialty that they can get on their own. So that even if you don't get the tender, but once they get the tender, they're still coming back to you to source the other products that they might need for them to execute that project. And all these businesses, mining companies, your retail businesses, they are in a tendering system. Your network suppliers, your Vodacom, MTN, your banks, they are tendering. It's an easy market to access. It's not expensive to access. You just need to make sure that you are compliant, you have the necessary resources to execute, and you price correctly. In big businesses, yes, we have this negative connotation with the tenders to say that market is for corrupt people. Yes, most of them are corrupt. But you can still access that market. Now, it takes us to what I just explained now. It takes us to the AUI. These two guys, it's Ephraim and David. Ephraim is the founder, is the corrupt one. In this case, if you have to compare them with the tenderpreneurs. It's the corrupt one, and then it gets David, who's more, call it the technocrat, the hard-working one. Now, in this case, Ephraim identified a gap in defense contracts or defense tenders in the USA. What happened is that the USA made a mistake of giving tenders to the Chinese to supply arms to the US defense. During the Bush administration, then there were mess-ups with those contracts, and the country started blaming the Pentagon to say, why are you giving all the contracts to the Chinese? Then the Pentagon or the US Defense went into a massive drive to give small tenders to SMMEs so that they give opportunity to small businesses that wants to go into the defense industry. Similar to the South African government, that's what they're doing. They're in the tender system to give small businesses opportunity to serve the tender market. Yes, the big contracts are still going to the big boys, but there will be smaller ones that are going to the SMMEs. Now, Ephraim in War Dogs, he saw that opportunity, and there were not many people playing in the defense space, especially SMMEs. Yes, there were big players playing there, but there were not many SMMEs that are playing in that space. Because similarly, if you look at the South African environment, it's buy and supply, buying tissue here, buying printing paper, like the simple stuff, catering, those type of things. Those are the type of tenders or requests for quotations that many SMMEs are going for. There are few that are going for aviation. They're going for tenders in this case in the defense, like AUI in War Dogs, where Ephraim and David, they went for the defense contracts. They went in, but without funding. Yes, they had Ralph as a silent partner. So they spoke to Ralph to say, Ralph, if we secure a contract, we want you to fund us on those contracts, then for profit share. Ralph agreed, Okay, but I mean, in the process, they screwed him. They were not paying what is supposed to be paid. But this is how simple it is for them to access the defense market. They didn't have funding from a financial institution. They just found a person that they know in the area to say, we are going into this space. Should we secure a contract, will you be able to put investment in there to fund that contract? And at the time, they were going for small contracts, supplying gas masks here, supplying small things here and there. And then that's how they accessed that defense market. Slowly, they grew in that market. They start supplying proper contracts, where I think they were starting with 15,000 type of orders and all those things. And then as they understood the market, because you need to understand the market. For you to access the market, you need to have an understanding of the market that you are servicing. And you can't go big in the market that you're still trying to understand. It's advisable to start small, like Ephraim and David, how they started into the defense contracts. They started with small ones, here and there, getting tenders, supplying this, supplying lighting there, this thing there. They want this safety stuff. Then they were supplying those. Then as they were learning the industry and they were building contacts, they were building networks, the value of their contracts started to grow. And they didn't need funding for that because they already had Ralph as the partner, silent partner. Once they get a contract, they go to him. Here's the contract. Can you fund us? And I mean, even if you bring it to the South African environment, we have a lot of so-called fintechs, which are not fintechs as much. They're just systems where you submit your order and they take session. There's no any other analysis unless you are listed, whatever, on credit bureau. But if you have a clean record, then you get your funding. That environment is similar. The environment in War Dogs is similar to the environment in South Africa in many ways. Now, what they did, they accessed a small market. They didn't have money to access it. But what did they do? They worked hard. They went through the tender advert, because at the time, the US government had for defense, had a special site where they advertise all these tenders, like our government e-tender system, where you can go in, look for tenders. So all they did is they had an office, they had computers, they had a phone. What they were doing every day is to log into computers, look for tenders, pick up the phone the suppliers, build a relationship to say, we see in this tender here, if we buy from you, how much can you sell it for us, what, so that when they quote, they know already how much the supplier is going to charge them, and they add their margins and they submit the tender. How much did they invest in the business to start? Limited. Laptop, computer, maybe offices to have access to internet. You can do it from your house. Just have to have access to laptop, access to internet. There are tendering system. You just have to make sure, like, obviously you register, you have your tax clearance, you are on the CSD. Then you are ready to go. But obviously, like if you are in construction, there are CIBDs, whatever numbers that you have to. But you start from zero or whatever that number is. Then you build up your profile as you gain the experience. So that's what Ephraim and David did when it comes to how they build AUI. Then they landed the first contract. They landed the second until they've landed a 300 million contract. No bank funding at the time. Bootstrapped. Found a dry clean owner who funded their initial project. And then as they find project, then they go to him, here's another project. Then they get their cut. He gets his cut, they take their cut. I think his cut was 15% of the profit that they were making. Until they landed a 300 million contract, it was massive. And Still, they didn't need the funding for it because Ralph was there. Now, even the sourcing, because they met the guy called Henry Gerard, who was connected in the arms space. He knew where to find the bullets, whatever the AK-47 ammunition, because that 300 million contract was the AK-47 ammunition. He knew where to find them. He arranged for them to meet whoever the seller in Albania. And he got paid his cut. Everyone was getting his cut from AY delivering and paying the suppliers. 300 million, limited funding to fund the contract. You just needed a triathlon owner from your community. In this case, Ephraim and Ralph were both Jews, so they had a religious relationship, so it was easier for him to fund Ephraim, for Ralph to fund Ephraim. So find a person who can fund you if you secure the contract. But what is key here? Why did Ralph fund Ephraim? It was sort of risk, okay, with limited risk, because you don't give me the money. All I have to do is to go find the market. I identify the market that I want to service. I go tender. Once I've tendered, then once I secure the tender, then I come to you to say, here's the tender, I need so much, here's your cut. Simple. All that Ephraim and David had to do is to sit on the net, search for contract, build relationship with the suppliers. That doesn't cost much. It costs your time. You invest your time in making sure that you secure access to market. The market is not going to come to you. You need to work on your market. As one scene David said, to say Ephraim knew his guns. He knew the industry. He will tell you different models. He knew what needs to happen. He knew where to source guns. He understood that sector. That doesn't need funding. That doesn't need much. You just need hard work and understanding. Understanding your sector. Identifying the gaps. Because there are not many players, SMMEs, that are playing in, call it, defense space in it. Even you as an entrepreneur, how many people that you know that are SMMEs supplying defense? Not with food, of course. Most of our entrepreneurs are supplying food, tissue, catering, those simple things. But on the technical side of things, supplying them ammunition, supplying them bombs and those things. So that's what they were doing. There were not many players in there, most especially small ones. So they knew that this opportunity exists. So using the words of Ephraim, he said, at the time, Bush opened the floodgates, because he opened the floodgates, giving opportunities to SMMEs to service the defense industry. It's the same thing. Our government, with the tendering system, they have opened the floodgates. It's just, unfortunately, the way we service in the market, we're looking at the tender market only. We don't, after you access this market, we don't look for, okay, again, this is ignorant statement. I know there are some entrepreneurs that are really diversifying. Once they get a tender, they diversify market-wise, not product-wise. You look at different markets that you can service with the similar infrastructure that you are servicing government with. So even David and Ephraim from AUI, they didn't diversify. And once, I guess, once they got caught in the defense, then they didn't have any other product to supply. And they were suspended, I think, for 10 years. They couldn't supply government for 10 years after they were caught with the repackaging of those ammunitions that they sent to Afghanistan. Because they didn't have any other project, or they were servicing only one market. So if you lose that market, then you have a problem, because you lost your key market, and for you to recover from that, you are doomed basically. If you're targeting government market, you're not diversifying your market segment. If you lose that market for whatever reason, they say, okay, they don't arrest you like Ephraim and David, but let's say they cancel procurement in that space, and then you're dead. What you need to do, once you secure the market, diversify, find a different market, diversify the market, not necessarily the product. Find other markets that consumes your product and focus on in developing, accessing that market, build up that market so that if something happens to the market that you secured, then you have an alternative market that you can service. That's one thing that's very important. So with these 3 case studies, you can see that different industries have different strategies that they can implement in accessing the market. Look at your industry, understand how it operates so that you can develop the strategy in how you access the market. Remember now, the different industries, obviously, you need to understand that sector because different industries have different way of operating. They're operating differently. I told you about how Ray started when you are selling multi-mixers. For him to access the market, he had to get into the car and drive to the customers, show them the multi-mixers and sell them. That's how he was accessing the market. Getting into the car, driving to the customer, showing him the customer's product. With McDonald's, he had to build a store as a showroom or to demonstrate how the system works so that when he calling the customers, they can come and see how the McDonald's franchise work. And he went to the immediate friends or network. He sold them the store, and then as the brand grew, people saw the brand and they approached him to set up. That's how he accessed the market when it came to the McDonald's franchise or brand. Then we spoke about Billy. In terms of Billy, he didn't have the budget. He had to find an innovative way to access the market. He studied the market. He saw the gaps. He saw the mistake that the baseball market is making in buying players. Then he came up with the strategy to buy the cheapest players that they can give him the most runs and therefore the wins. He went on to win 20 games without losing. So that's how Billy developed his strategy to access the market. Now, went on to David. Okay, David initially, because he was selling blankets to old age homes, then you couldn't access that market because he didn't do the market study. He didn't understand the dynamics in that market. So he bought the blankets, but he was not able to sell them, those blankets or the sheets, whatever, because he was targeting old age home. But he didn't study that market. Based on his conclusion, he said he bought those things, but he missed the point that no one cares about old people. That's what caused his business to fail. He didn't study the market. But before that, remember, he was doing the massage, and then as well as for him to access the market, he had bought his massage kit, and he was going around massaging rich people. It was cheap. Instead of setting up a massage parlor, he just bought a kit, and then he went and massaged people in their houses. And that was a cheaper way of setting up and accessing the market. Then, if that business was successful, or if he didn't meet Ephraim, you could have maybe expanded into setting up a massage parlor or a spa. But he didn't go and say, fund me, give me 2 million to set up a spa because I want to massage people. He bought a small kit, he went out and he went and massaged people in their homes. Setup cost is cheap. He accessed the market. He understood the market that he was servicing. But he just messed up when he went into the different market, which is selling bed sheets. So in that bed sheets, as he said, that he missed the point of not studying the market that he was trying to access. Now, that is David before AUI. At AUI, him and Ephraim. Okay, actually, Ephraim saw the defense market. He saw the opportunities that the Bush at the time opened for SMMEs. Then he went into that market. He knew that they want to support the local SMMEs. But he just didn't go and they just gave him. He understood the market. He understood the requirements. He studied the market. He knew the different products that he can offer in that market. So it's very, very critical for you to understand the market. And that one is the simplest way of accessing the market. He just went for the tender system. Make sure if you're SME in South Africa, you register you register your company, have your BE certificate, tax clearance, make sure that your CSD is compliant. Then you are ready for business to access that market, to access government market. That's what Ephraim did in War Dogs. So it was easy, and ultimately they got the 300 million Afghan contract. But they started small.